viewers, and welcome to the latest episode of The Huddle. Tim Poole here, and I'm with Shona ODonnell, founder of So Events, a familiar face to many in gaming. Shona, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Tim.
Looking forward to talking to you about all things events, all things trade shows, not necessarily just gambling and gaming either. But to start with, for anyone who might not be familiar, or for anyone who is familiar and maybe want to hear a little bit more, can you tell us your story and how you, I guess, got to where you are today?
Yeah, so I really fell into both gambling and events by mistake, which I think is quite a familiar story.
Yes.
My background's in marketing, and I was working in B2B sports, and within that family was IGB. Probably about 20 years ago now, when IGB was very small and we didn't have a huge number of events. Because we were such a small team, I naturally gravitated towards helping. If I'm honest, we all did a little bit of everything back then. And the events, as everyone knows, took off and became huge. Then we were acquired by Clarion, and we really learned a lot about how to professionalise our events. We were a little bit like a pirate ship in the seas back in the day. From there, I did 11 years in total across Clarion and IGB. Really an amazing experience for me, and genuinely fell in love with the gaming industry and with events. Made a lot of really good friends, and when I left Clarion, I was quite specific about where I wanted to go and ended up moving to Better Collective, big Danish sportsbook affiliate, who I had known the founders of for a very long time, and went there to head up their events and marketing, which was brilliant for me. I got to work with some brilliant people and also spend a lot of time in Copenhagen, which is a fantastic city. Unfortunately, they let a lot of people go back in 2024, which included me. And I think that was the maybe not so gentle push I needed to take the final step in setting up my own events agency. I had thought about it for a long time, but never quite had the courage, if I'm very honest.
Yeah.
And when I was in a position where I didn't have anything to lose, it just felt like the right time. And So Events was born.
Quite the journey, some high points and low points, as you mentioned, that can, I suppose, qualify you to, as we start a discussion on trade shows and conferences, if we were to think about the perfect trade show, the perfect conference, and again, we certainly in gambling have an idea of how shows look, but they look different in other industries. Some people say they're a bit more exciting in gaming, but everyone has their own opinion. If we were to look at the perfect trade show and conference, how might it look, and where might you start maybe with that?
Where do you start? That's a great
broad question, by the way.
That's a great question. So if we're talking about the very initial point, let's maybe say location. I think you could say that if you have all of the perfect elements, so the right buyers, the right sellers, the right content, great networking, it doesn't matter where the location is. But I would say that's definitely not true. There are events in the calendar in gaming that we know people love to go to because they love the location. There's a reason why SBC are moving their event to Amsterdam. So location definitely counts. And I think especially if you look at what's happened in the Middle East recently, Dubai is a massive hub for events, not so much in gaming for obvious reasons in terms of regulation, but certainly for a lot of other sectors. And we've seen most of the events happening in Dubai have shut down now, maybe thinking about coming back in June, July. So location's definitely important in terms of, can people get there? Is it safe? And is it somewhere people want to go? Because I think we can see that people definitely will tag days on or build their own events alongside major events. So location's super important. And then it's about attracting the right people. You need the right number of buyers and sellers in a room, and you need a way for them to be able to find each other. I think one of the things with the mega events, so let's say definitely ICE in our sector, and SBC Lisbon is now chasing hard on ICE's tails. These are fantastic, I think, for big networking, seeing product launches and what's happening. I think if you're new to a sector, it can be quite hard to find the right people. So then I think that comes on to kind of concierge, and I know we're going to talk later about AI, but how can you personalize those experiences? So I think more and more within the really big events, what organisers need to be thinking about doing is how do you personalise them? And I think in the past we've seen lots of dinners for specific sectors or events or zones. So this is payments, this is sports. But I think what we're going to see in the next couple of years with AI is how we can really individualise that events experience.
There's plenty. I guess there's plenty more we can talk about, and we will. But let's just say, and put you on the spot a little bit. But you've mentioned predominantly location, having the right people there, and then an element of personalization. If you could maybe rank them in terms of the most important, or maybe they're just all just as important as each other.
I think having the right people in the room is the most important thing. And one thing I haven't covered that I think is really important, and perhaps it's more important in terms of decision making for attending in smaller events, is content.
Yeah.
But I definitely think having the right people in the room, most people for the big events certainly are going to network. I think when we look at surveys and why people say they're attending events, for most people it's about networking, meeting existing customers and meeting new customers.
If we were to look at it as, I guess, let's say the evolution of events and how it's changed over time, these things we're discussing now, do you think they really actually never change, these fundamentals? Or if we were having this conversation 10 years, 20 years ago, would it be completely different?
No, I think ultimately these things stay the same. And I think it's similar to lots of things like event formats. How do you change them? How do you make new something that's a tried and tested formula? And I definitely think you can, but I also think there can be a risk of doing something that's novel for the sake of it, but not necessarily adding to the visitor experience. In my experience, it's best to deliver something at an exceptional level rather than do lots of things that are novel but not deliver any of them very well. I'm a big believer in under-promise and over-deliver.
That ties in really with the next couple of things we're going to mention. I used the word evolution, and I didn't realize I've actually got it written down for the question afterwards anyway. But when it comes to how things have changed, would you say shows now, and we could maybe say gambling, because maybe, yeah, for this purpose, let's talk about the gambling industry, because in general it might be different in different industries. But are shows now better than they were, or have we? And maybe the answer is yes to both. Has anything been lost along the way as well?
Yes to both. I think like I mentioned, as shows get bigger, you lose some of that intimacy. These mega shows have like a really important place in any sector's ecosystem. But I also think there's a lot to be said as sectors mature for smaller, more intimate events that allow those attending to develop deeper relationships rather than doing lots of 30-minute meetings where really the relationship develops afterwards. In terms of things that delegates will never think about, health and safety.
Almost unspoken that, you would if you don't see it, it means it's working.
Exactly. Yeah, if you don't have to think about it, it means it's working. I think in terms of organising transportation, so before it would be quite rare for organisers to run lots of transport. I think SBC is really good at that in Lisbon. There's multiple hotels all across the city where they're running buses and making it really easy. I think that's a good thing that organisers are doing now, is they're making it hard for you to say no in terms of attending. So they're doing as much as possible for you. I think catering has gotten better, which is always something people complain about.
Yeah.
I think in terms of sustainability as an industry, we're getting better. I think it's perhaps more important for some of the bigger companies within the gaming sphere. But I definitely think it's something that everyone should be considering, especially if you think that for most people, attending an event, they won't think about what happens to their stand afterwards. Does it get skipped? Is it recycled? Are they working with suppliers who take sustainability seriously? Especially if you're an organisation that's maybe exhibiting at 5 or 6 trade shows. It's a lot of landfill.
Yeah.
My personal bugbear is gifting. I think lots of companies produce a lot of, I'm going to say it, absolute tat for the sake of having something to give away. And I just think that's so irresponsible, because most of these things are produced in countries where there will be no health and safety or very little. I'm not saying it's every company that does this, but a lot of people produce a lot of stuff that will go in bins in hotel rooms or bins when they get home. So I think there's small things that we can have some responsibility over.
That's an interesting point, because let's say if we sat down to talk about, like we said at the start, a perfect trade show, you might not necessarily think as granular as that. But that is a good point, because also with gifting and things like that, if you get a couple of bags from this stand, the likelihood is most people at the show are then going to go to a competitor or someone quite closely related to that company, and then have the branding somewhere else. They're probably not going to take it with them. They're probably going to leave it somewhere else. It kind of creates potential situations, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, but I think people feel this need to take, and I think it's much better.
Feels rude to say no, right?
Well, I was at an event on Tuesday, and I was offered a lot of different things, and I was like, thank you, that's really kind for the offer, but
you were brave enough to...
I won't use it, yeah. And I think another thing that we haven't actually touched on is when I first started in the industry was the lack of diversity. We very rarely, there was not very many women attending shows at all, but there were even less women speaking. And I think that's something there's still work to do, but it has greatly improved.
How much room how much room for further improvement is there? Because I think what you've said is probably a consensus in that we're in a much better place than we were, but are we far enough along the line?
I don't know the exact numbers of what percentage of women are in the gaming industry versus what percentage of men, but panels and people speaking at events should represent the audience from which they come. But are we far enough along? I'm going to say no, Tim. When we have organisers actively posting about events they're hosting where there are beauty contests and twerking competitions, then I think we've still got work to do.
Yeah, can't argue with that assessment. Absolutely. And I guess on that point, well, it's not strictly related to that point, but no, this is related to that point. But I was going to ask, I guess it's not a tough question, but a big question: are there too many events now, and particularly in gaming?
I've been on both sides. So I've been an organizer. I now help support companies if they want to run their own events or they want to attend events, and I have been a client. There are a lot of events, and some of them are relevant to everyone and some of them aren't. I think the industry complains a lot that there are too many events, but then you continue to see a lot of the same people support every single event.
Yeah.
So I guess we all have to take some responsibility for our decisions. I think what's really important is that as a business, your decision to attend events, whether that's as a delegate or an exhibitor or a sponsor, that should be taken in line with your overall business and growth strategies. It shouldn't be taken as a separate decision. If you believe that going to that event will give you a good return on investment, which we all know is really difficult to measure, but does it align with your growth? Is it going to help you meet the right customers or the right suppliers? So for example, if you're not doing anything in South American markets, then you probably don't want to go to GAT in Cartagena although Cartagena is a beautiful place and it's a great show, it's probably not the right one for you. So I think it's just about companies making decisions in line with their overall strategy so that they make sure they get the best value from attending.
Yeah, you mentioned return on investment, and I know that return on experience is something that you might want to talk about, but might be a phrase that you could maybe explain a little bit clearer to me as well, because if I was being cynical, I might say it sounds like a phrase you might hear on LinkedIn, and it might not necessarily add any, well, ironically, value, but I'm sure it isn't. And sort of walk me through what we might mean by a return on experience.
So everyone's really clear on what return on investment is, but it's
as difficult as it is to measure.
It's classically really hard to measure with events, because where do you place that deal value against? Is it the first event you met them, or did it come from the email? You know, because especially within gaming, a lot of these sales cycles are quite long. So return on experience, I guess, is more of an individual measurement rather than a business measurement. So it's more about thinking, especially because we know there's a lot of events and people travel a lot, is what was the experience like for you from start to finish? Do you think it was worth giving up your time at home, your time with your family, your routine, missing a friend's birthday? So there's all of those elements. As an experience, what did you gain from it? So it's not just about a monetary value. It's about, did you make connections that are valuable beyond just a single deal, perhaps? Did you learn something? Did you gain a cultural experience? So I would say it's a more holistic view.
Yeah, I suppose that there's still the classic conundrum of placing a value on that, but I guess, as in sort of financial. But it's probably easy to measure in the sense that you were at a show last year, you could say, was it good, was it bad, and all the things that you listed in terms of what you think you gained from it. And the thing is, if you think you gained from it, the chances are that you did, because you wouldn't come away with that experience otherwise.
Yeah, and I think maybe a good way to look at it is one of the things I always think about events is what people remember is how you made them feel. Mm-hmm. So they remember if something's happened and they've had a difficult time. If you have helped them and you've made them feel better, they remember that. If they have a really bad experience and you make them feel awful, they really carry that with them for a long time. So in events, it is often about how do you make someone feel. And I think in gaming, especially when you walk onto that show floor, especially the first time, because it's, you know, it's noisy, it's very casino-like.
Yeah.
You make people feel a certain way. You make people feel excited for what's coming over the next few days.
Yeah, I think that's very fair. And I think when it comes to certain shows, I personally, and I'm not going to name each individual show, but I know exactly, if there's a show in the calendar that I'm going to, I'll associate very much a feeling with it, or a kind of general, I don't necessarily want to say vibe. I do want to say vibe, but I don't want to sound too cheesy. But
no, I agree. We need a new word for vibe.
Sure. We'll work on that, and then we'll decide whether we did it here or in the follow-up email, or
Exactly.
Yeah, and I think that could well be the result of all the parts. So you don't necessarily know why you feel that show was really good, or just associate it with this. But then when you drill down, you think it's because it was well organized, it's because it was, or perhaps because it wasn't well organized, or because this was great and this was a bit chaotic. I'm almost thinking out loud there. That's how I might measure it in my head.
I think it comes back a little bit to what you said earlier, is there's some things that as a delegate you don't ever want to think about and don't ever want to see. So like health and safety, security, all of these things. And I guess it's kind of that, is like if an event works really well, in some ways it's all the things that you don't think about and don't see, because it's all those tiny like magical moments that happen along the way, all those like experiences you have, all those opportunities, those touch points with the event. And that might be with an organizer, or it might be in the when you walk into the venue, or with an exhibitor, or at a drinks reception. But it's all those tiny moments of connection.
Yeah, and that probably also links back to what the point you made about if the right people are there, there's probably more chance of that happening, because you'll see, oh, that's the person I wanted to meet, or that's someone I saw from another show. And yeah, if the wrong people are there, although that might also be more of a business thing, the chances of that happening are lower.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things people find hard is, like I said, with the big events. Yes, there's networking apps and you can message people, but very often the people that everyone wants to speak to are unlikely to respond to hundreds of outreach messages on an app.
Yeah, no, exactly. Tell me about festivalisation, which also sounds like a really cool concept word.
So I think events have obviously been around for a long time in the same format. And what people are really trying to do now is make them a bit more exciting, a bit more sexy. So it's this idea of having lots of things happening. So if you're at a festival, there'll be multiple stages, there'll be different things you can go and see, there's different experiences around food, around wellness, there might be some comedy, all different things. So I guess it's the idea of having many things in one place that meet everyone's needs. So I think we see that across SBC in Lisbon, for example. So they've brought in massive amounts of food vendors. So you have these food halls, which are very much like a street market. They have a lot of different events in the evening for different groups again. So you might like this kind of music, you should go here. You might like this, so you should go there. They have a massive party on the last night that really is like going to a massive gig. So, and then on the flip side of that, what I'm enjoying seeing now, especially as, I guess, people I have been in the industry as long as me, we've all grown up a little bit, and sometimes you just can't do nights and nights of very late bars. And we're seeing now more organisers, I know Nick's does a lot of it, bringing in more wellness experiences so that you're out of your routine, but there's a run club so that you know where you can go for a run if you're in a different city, particularly if you're a woman. I've gone for a run in cities where I don't know in the past, and kind of got halfway through a run and thought, I'm not so sure if I should be running on my own in the dark in this area. So things like that, opportunities for yoga, and also just giving people different ways to connect.
Yeah. As an organizer, how might one find the balance? Because the festivalisation I see a lot of, the wellness, the running is a good example. I've certainly seen, I think they had ICE and IGB. I know, for example, Naomi Barton, who since I think moved into another role.
Yeah, she's left, sadly.
Yeah, but I know she because she was going on the runs herself, so she's been on the huddle talking about that kind of concept. So, we can see an increase in both those things. But how do you? I'm not sure they're necessarily competing, but how would you balance it? Because there still is a demand for parties and things like that. Because, for example, myself, I don't want to sound older than I am or more boring than I am, but like some nights I'm like, yeah, I just want to go to sleep. But everyone else is saying, oh, but there's this party, this party, this party. You have to go, And I'm not complaining about that, by the way. It is nice to have parties, but yeah.
So I definitely think it's a balance, and I don't think what you're seeing is organisers not running parties in the same way. What you are seeing them do is add on the wellness events. So they're not saying you can come for a run, but we're not going to take you for a drink tonight. Sure. So I think that's where the balance is. And I think it's just about realising how diverse audiences are. And I think especially with the younger generation, who we are seeing, like, they don't drink, they don't smoke, they're more health conscious. And these are the people who are now joining the industry. So it's about providing something for all different people, because like I say, increasingly younger people don't drink. So you want to give them an opportunity. And I guess that comes on to things like making sure if you are running evening networking events, are there non-alcoholic drinks that aren't a Coke or water? So that everyone feels like they're treated equally.
Yeah.
And I think the right way to add additional events in is to do it slowly, so that as an organizer, you're balancing your risk. And also lots of people are, working with Behind the Gloves, with Lee, and bringing these events, which are doing loads of amazing charity work as well, bringing them on board. And you shouldn't feel as an organiser, I think, that you have to carry everything yourself. It's a great way to build out an event and, I guess, increase this kind of festivalisation to speak to people who are in a similar space, who can run events that are adjacent to yours because they can capitalise off that audience and partner with them and see the benefits of working together, because that enhances your overall event rather than seeing it as competitive.
Yeah. To maybe flip the script a little, and maybe with people that you work with at your agency, adding these things and these elements, and even, for example, the example of adding non-alcoholic drinks, there's an added cost to that, potentially. So, adding things to a menu, or, adding events. Again, I bring in balance into this. How does a good event organizer balance the extra cost of these things versus what if they just decided, well, it's going to add cost, and this is not the right strategy, but they might say, well, we'll just do it the tried and tested way, because, for example, what if trends come and go, for example. So something that is, I think wellness isn't a trend, that's a necessity, so I'm not implying that it isn't, but maybe other things that might be popular now might not be in 2 years. I hope that makes sense as a question. How do you balance potentially an extra cost of something when maybe even as an organizer the return on investment is perhaps uncertain? And I hope that makes sense as a question.
That makes sense. So I think there's 2 ways you can do it, and I think as an organizer you should always be thinking about like longevity, and especially in an increasingly busy events calendar, is you want people to have a good experience and come back. So there is a need for you as an organizer to invest into your own events. So thinking about what is the value of this right now. The value of this is it's a cost. I'm putting a line on my P&L, and it's going to cost me money. But is it going to significantly enhance the experience for a number of delegates, that it means when I email them and say tickets are live for next year, they're immediately going to book on. So I think it's about thinking about the long term. The other thing I think is, as we see things that are trends, and some things will come and go, is you might also find that you've got partners, sponsors, existing customers, who for them that's a real focus, and they're looking for something different to invest in at the event, and it might be something that really aligns with their values.
Yeah, so there's, I think the more areas we explore, probably a overarching theme is just that there's always several parties involved, kind of different areas of the audience, different, as you say, sponsors and partners, and it's not necessarily just one person making decisions and things like that.
Yeah, and I think one of the important things as an organizer is to continually talk to your audience. And I think sometimes there's a tendency to really focus on your biggest sponsors, your biggest exhibitors. I'm not saying they're not important, but also your delegates who might attend for free, in some ways they're as important. It's a really complicated balance, but I always like to think when I was running like the IGB events like back in the day, I would hope that I treated everyone I spoke to at the event in the same way, whether they were our platinum sponsor or they were a brand new affiliate who had just started a website and didn't know anyone and didn't know very much about the industry. I would like to think that I gave everyone the same level of time, care and respect.
Yeah, I don't know if you've ever seen a show called The Bear on Disney+.
Yeah, obsessed.
Oh, fantastic. You'll know what I'm going to...
I find it very stressful to watch, though.
Yeah. I think some of the best scenes are the most stressful ones. But there's a bit when they're waiting for the reviewer, and then they say, how do we know who the reviewer is? And they say, it doesn't matter. Every customer, as far as you're concerned, is the reviewer. Kind of what you made me think of there with that comparison, I guess.
Yeah. I think that's really true. And I mean, the industry's much bigger now than when I started, but there's like 1 million WhatsApp groups, and there's forums and there's lots of different communities. People talk. if someone does something not very nice to someone, which happened recently in a community group, like everyone knows about it really quickly.
Yeah, word spreads. I mean, word of mouth is, well, I guess today it's a topic in itself today, because technically everything is, as you said, because you've got WhatsApp, you've got social media, and you've got the word spreads quickly. AI, which we could this is something I might say occasionally. We could do a whole hour on just AI. We won't, but how is it impacting this area, and how might it impact it maybe more, or should it impact it more?
I think what AI will do is give organisers, alongside other technology, so not just AI, the ability to create much more personalised experiences, to think more about floor plans, to think about how they're building shows and directing traffic. I also think that organisers need to remember that all of their delegates and customers will be using AI as well. So maybe they have accessibility to information that not they couldn't access before, but that would have been more difficult to access, so they wouldn't have bothered. I mean, I think it's amazing. My big challenge was building a website, so I'm great at running events. I'm super customer focused. I can think about venues, I can think about logistics, I can think about strategy and how, events can help you grow that and how to align you with the right customers. I can't build a website, Tim. I couldn't have done that without AI, So it is really amazing. But then I think you should be thinking about how you use AI, and it sounds ridiculous, but you're using it for good, not evil, I guess.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, I know what you mean.
So don't think about it in terms of, because I think lots of people are like, oh, how can I reduce my workforce? Think about how can you empower your workforce. So for me, I will use AI if I'm doing a venue search for a client. And I obviously have a lot of experience. So specifically if I'm doing a search in London, I will already have a lot of venues that just live in my head. And I'll do a search. I know I've got super specific prompts. I've got an agent that works with me that I've made. And I guarantee you, between 50 and 75% of what it gives me back is not suitable. So it's about, yes, maybe using it as a tool, but realizing that you still need real life experience.
Yeah, I think that's a conclusion that kind of a lot of areas have come to so far anyway. And it kind of links to a question I want to ask, but I think you've kind of addressed it with the main point, but is there a risk so AI can help personalize shows, but it could also potentially dehumanize certain aspects of it, in the sense that if you were to ask an AI chatbot to produce your conference panel, it would probably be super informative, and it would probably be, I'm assuming here, but really, really packed with information, but it probably lacks the human touch of everything we've been talking about in terms of what gives you that return on experience.
Well, I think the thing is AI can only go out and index the information, like an LLM can only index the information that's there, whereas a really good conference producer will go out and have multiple research calls with the people that are your audience. So there's exactly that. A great conference producer will go back and forward and ask questions. And if I say to you, what's the biggest challenge in your job just now? And you say, it's X. I'll then come back and keep drilling down. And I know people would say you can do that with an LLM, but it's just not the same as a conference producer who understands the nuances of that person, their role in the ecosystem, and how that impacts the other people that will be in the audience that are also in that ecosystem. So I think it's great for background research. It's great for lots of things. But I mean, I've always said, when anyone tells you something, it's like, what's your source? Where's that data come from? Has someone created a report? If they've created a report, have they created it themselves? I always think about, reports in the medical sector that have been written by Big Tobacco or someone like that.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing. You can definitely refine it with AI, and I think we're all, myself, definitely getting better at saying, I don't want these sources, and I only want sources between these dates and all sorts of things. And I would say I'm like a fairly like low-level user, so there's definitely people doing it better than me. But yeah, I don't think you get the nuanced information that you have in a conversation.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, some feedback might even be someone might have an angle to say, oh, this should be better, but they're doing it for a commercial reason, or someone might just be having a bad day, and you think they're saying that now, but tomorrow they would have said something different. You know, little human elements like that, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, that AI was a kind of a big, broad question in itself, but would like to maybe end with a couple of high-level, big questions. And I don't want to put you on the spot too much, but if we were to look at what are the biggest mistakes? I mean, you've probably mentioned a couple already, but the biggest mistakes, and this can be gaming, but it can also be kind of all industries, because kind of you're working with more than just gaming.
Yeah.
What are the biggest mistakes that shows make today, or are making at the moment?
Oh, I've probably made some of them myself.
But you learn from them, I suppose.
Yeah, you definitely learn from them, but it can be painful.
I'm getting the sense it stays with you.
Yeah, it definitely does. What are the biggest mistakes? Deciding, I think one of the biggest mistakes I think is deciding that there is a new event out there without having those research conversations.
Mm-hmm.
I know certainly in the past, I mean, it's a long time ago now, we would be like, oh, there's definitely an event in this, we should put this event on. But we decided it, like, we didn't have very many conversations, we didn't go out and ask our audience. I definitely think organisers are better at that now. Also because I think the risk is higher, like in terms of launching something and it not working, especially with the more established organisers. So I definitely think, make sure you've done your research and that there is an audience for what you want to do. And not only an audience for what you want to do in terms of, yes, they'd like to come, but yes, they'd like to come, they'd like to sponsor, they'd like to buy a ticket, if that's your model. Think about, there's really obvious, but like think about how people are going to get to the venue. People will complain about a lot of things that aren't directly your fault as an organiser, but ultimately they believe, and to some extent, you are responsible for their whole experience from the minute they leave their house to the minute they get back to their house.
Yeah. Almost to add to that, how to get there, but also not forgetting how to get back as well at the end of the day.
Yeah. So just thinking about where things are, and it is really hard because sometimes, depending on the size of there's only so many places ICE could have moved to. But yeah, definitely thinking about people's experience in terms of transport. If you move a show somewhere that they need to take 4 flights to, they're going to arrive already not excited for the event.
If there's one thing you could fix in events, and you've mentioned a few different things there, so you can only pick one. But it could be anything that we've discussed or anything we haven't discussed. If there's one thing that you think, no more of that, or change this, what would it be?
I'd like to see diversity across like all of the events, not just like the bigger organisers. And I don't just mean in terms of gender, I mean in terms of everyone who is underrepresented at the events. I'd like to see no more events with twerking. Yeah. I think it's crazy that was even...
I did, when I said of all the things we've talked about, I did think that might make it on this list, but rightly so.
My one thing is I would like to see no twerking at events moving forward.
And finally, this is going to sound very broad, but what is the future of events? And I've deliberately made it quite broad.
What is the future of events? I think events have and always will be about connecting people. That's ultimately what it's about. Whether that's business to business, it's still two people who are going to work together, buy from each other. So I think the future is more personalised event experiences, particularly within the larger events. So thinking about how you can use AI and other technology tools to help direct people once they're in venue. Like moving around ICE this year was really challenging. So thinking about how you can help people do that. I think more smaller, intimate events to help people really connect, because if you're a senior person, you don't want to spend 3 days at ICE trying to meet with 4 or 5 other people. I think if you can be guaranteed that you'll go somewhere and 30% of that room are people that you really want to talk to, that you'll gain something from and that you'll be able to move something forward, or they'll be able to make an introduction to someone else that you really need. I think the big events will always remain, and they're really important, especially for like seeing products. But I think small and intimate is where people will get more value, especially as we're more time poor.
And you think do you think that's something that should happen more, or do you think that is the way that events will evolve? Or no crystal ball, you can't say for sure.
I can't say for sure. I think it's hard for big organisers to do both. I think they're doing a good job at creating some of these experiences within bigger events. But I think smaller, more localised events, as people think about travel, time and sustainability, would be nice to see and will give people more value for their time. And I think people are seeking value for their time now as much as they are value for their spend.
Well, Shona, thanks very much for your time. Really enjoyed the conversation. I don't want to sound too cheesy, but I'm sure I'll see you at an event soon, given what we've discussed. But thanks so much for all the insight.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It was really lovely to talk today.